Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Free Agent. Here we have Nicole Donnelly. Nicole, thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Bo. So nice to see you. I'm so excited to be here. It's
Yeah,
awesome. Thanks for having me. It's such an
Yeah, I'm
honor.
glad, I'm glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining. So I'll just do a quick bio. So Nicole is a fourth generation small business owner and fierce advocate for small businesses. She loves helping SMBs succeed by taking the hassle, overhead, and guesswork of marketing off their shoulders. Nicole provides strategic marketing support and lead marketing execution as a fractional CMO. So her customers can focus on what they do best, which is serving their own customers. So I think what you do is super topical and timely, considering the gig economy and the huge movement here. So I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit with the audience about yourself, your background, and how'd you get started as a fractional CMO?
Yeah, great question. So I will tell you, entrepreneurship, I feel like it runs in my blood. I have my father, I watched him grow a business as a child from a solo entrepreneur to a company that has 30 employees now. My
Wow.
grandfather owned a motel right across the street from Disneyland of all places. And my great grandfather owned an oil company. So I've always felt very connected to small businesses from the time I was little and just feel like that's kind of like in my DNA, if you will.
Mhm.
So have always had a deep passion for helping small businesses succeed. I've seen directly how they've positively impacted families and communities, and just love the whole underdog element of small business against the big corporate, behemoth. So yeah, how I got into this business was I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was working in-house as a marketing manager for a manufacturing company,
Mhm.
and literally came into that company and built out their marketing department from nothing. They literally had no CRM to speak of. They had a very antiquated sales process, no marketing at all, and came into that business and really set in all of the marketing infrastructure for them and built out an entire content marketing strategy, got them set up with a new CRM platform, implemented marketing automation and workflows. And it was just really exciting and thrilling to see that transformation, how it transformed the business and see the growth that came once they really went all in and really committed to investing in this marketing engagement. So that is what I'm passionate about. I love going into these small businesses who just really have been operating using these old sales methods and are ready to take their business to the next level of growth and just need some help getting there.
So was that kind of the light bulb moment when you decided that it was time to start your own consultancy? Because I mean, now you're a fractional CMO. So,
Yeah.
you were in corporate America, grew up in a family
Mhm.
of entrepreneurs. So I guess maybe you were always compelled or felt that that was your path. But when did you know that it was time, and how did you know that marketing
Yeah.
area versus
Oh,
creating
great,
e-commerce or being an influencer, right?
great question. We were having such great success and I just loved it so much. And I thought, I'd really love to do this for other businesses. And so I started putting the pieces in place. I started doing some planning of like, what would it look like if I took on my client, my employer as a client,
Mhm.
right? So instead of working in house, I could be a CMO for them and then take on other clients. So I started to do some planning there. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from a previous employer. This is probably after I'd been thinking about this and planning for it for like 3 months. And it was like the stars were aligned. I had an old employer call me and said, "Hey, look, we really love some help with our marketing. Will you help us?" And I thought to myself, if this isn't a sign, then I don't know what is, right? So I knew that it was time for me to take the leap. And so that's when I decided to start my business. I approached my employer, and they were gracious enough to let me like take them on as a client and still have a wonderful
It
relationship
rarely
with them
happens,
today.
just so you know. Most employers, I feel, get upset, get mad, but that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of relationship.
Oh, yes. I'm so deeply grateful for that. And and for my previous employer for trusting me to come in and do that. So I started out with two clients. I feel like incredibly blessed and grateful. So many people, I think, when they start their business, they're just like struggling and clawing away to get business for that first year. So in many ways, I feel so blessed that I was able to start the way that I did. And then since then, it's been such a roller coaster, but I just love it. It's wonderful. I
Awesome.
wouldn't trade it for the world. I'm living my dream.
No, I love that. And there's also a lot of parallels and similarities with kind of my background and kind of how I
Yeah.
started and entrepreneurial story as well. And maybe that's something we should say for another day on my other podcast,
Yeah.
finding that next year. That's exciting. So how long have you been in business and been independent now?
I've been in business for almost 3 years. I started my business a month before COVID. So yeah, it was a crazy time to start. And I'll never forget that month when we were all shut down and was sitting there and I was like, what did I just do?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But if you made it through that, I mean, candidly, you can make it through anything, right? I mean,
I
I
agree.
was, I think 2 years in, or maybe 2.5 years in, and ended up being a good year, surprisingly. And that's my
Yeah,
mentality. It's like recession, no recession, I don't care. I made
I
it through
agree.
that crap. Like it's all good
It's
here.
distraction. It's
Yeah.
distraction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some details here, right? So, the
Mhm.
premise of this podcast is really trying to provide actionable insights to SMBs. What can they do tomorrow with maybe on a shoestring budget? And so for the growth companies out there, marketing is top of mind for all of them. It's top of mind for my company. We're small, 5 people. Um, so for the growth companies out there, when do they know that it's perhaps time to outsource marketing to a consulting company, maybe a fractional CMO
Mhm.
such as yourself, or bring in a full-time CMO? Because
I
that's
love
a
this
tough discussion,
question.
tough discussion, tough decision, cash outlay. There's a lot of implications there. And is a 3-time process where you outsource, you use interim, you do full-time. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
I think that's such a great question. And I would say the first thing as a business owner you need to think about is how are your sales? Are your sales flat? Are you growing? I think if sales are flat, you're a great candidate. If you're getting most of your leads from referrals or from your existing customers and you want to grow, then that's a really great opportunity for you to look at outsourcing. I think the other thing that I think is really important is to look at what your mindset is, because I've worked with companies who say that they want to grow and say that they want to invest in marketing, but then when the rubber meets the road, they're not ready to make the
Just
transformation
because
because
of
it
risk
is.
aversion or what?
Yes, I think risk aversion and, to be honest, whenever you go through a marketing transformation and invest in it, it requires a lot of change.
Yes.
It requires you to do things differently than what you've done before. And I think sometimes, once it gets into that, a lot of business owners just they're not ready to make that change. So you have to look. I think you have to be ready and make sure that you have alignment from your team. So I would say those are the main things. And then also how profitable is your business? Are your net profit margins? Could they be better? That's a good opportunity to invest in marketing to see how you can improve your products and services to
Hmm.
make them more profitable.
No, I
Yeah.
love that. I think that's a phenomenal point. And it's tough for marketing, especially because from my perspective, it's like, where's the ROI? And a lot of times it's 6 months out, maybe it's 8 months out, maybe it's a year out. And so,
Yes.
I'm always thinking, where else can I invest that money? And marketing's so important, but it's a cost center until it's not. And there's no telling, and when it's going to shift from a cost center to a profit center. So that's quite tough. So a couple of things as well in regards to marketing. So where do you think a lot of these growth companies could get the biggest bang for their buck? Where they're also kind of saving money, but able to invest a little bit in marketing, but get maximum value in return.
Yes, I would say the first place I always recommend people start is to talk to your customers. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And so always talk to them, but not talking to them in like on a sales call. Actually having a conversation with them specifically to understand and ask them, what keeps you up at night? What are you angry about right now? What do you wish were easier in your day-to-day life related to whatever it is, the product or service that you're asking, and having those like really deep, intimate conversations with your customers first and foremost. It costs you nothing. And the
Right.
insights that you get from those conversations are gold, because ultimately you're here to serve your customers. Any product and service you're creating, it's in service to them. So the closer that you can get to them and understand those challenges, the more it will help guide you in terms of what you need to do next, right? So, and that really will help you determine what marketing channels you need to be on, right? So,
I,
because that's different for every business, some businesses, their ideal buyer is going to be all over LinkedIn. Some businesses, their ideal buyer is on Instagram.
mm,
So, really understanding your customer first before you try to think about like, what are the tactics we need to do and what are the channels? So I would say that's one thing that's, very cost effective. And then the second thing is take that information from your customers and really put down a list of questions. Like, what are the top questions that they have that they're asking you over and over again about your product? Write those questions down. And then what we do with the process that we do for our existing clients that you
mm.
can easily do in house is we interview the subject matter experts. So in this case, you can just record yourself talking about those questions and answering them. And then, Otter transcription service is completely free.
Mm.
You can just get an Otter account and record the conversation. And now you have a transcript that you can very quickly and easily turn into a blog post. And I think that's for small business owners, that's the key, is just starting to create that content that's going to scale your sales department. That's what it's all about. It's about taking those top questions, those top concerns that you're hearing during your sales process. How can you move that conversation online? How can you create content and put it online to answer them so that you're qualifying those customers before they call you? And I think that's a really scrappy way you can do it, is by talking to your customers, really understanding them, taking that information and just recording yourself answering those questions, transcribing it, and turning it into a blog post and video.
I think that's fantastic. I literally wrote down auto subscription when you're talking.
Mhm.
And one thing I want to add as well is that I went through that exercise with my customers when I outsourced kind of a fractional CMO myself, and it was very insightful. And one thing I would suggest, and maybe you'll agree with me or not agree with me, but using a third party to have those customer discussions, because we ultimately had a third party that sat down with the customers, they agreed with it, and it was quite disarming. I feel they're also more honest with her than they would have been with me. And it provided us a lot of insights. It really helped with our messaging, helped with kind of our pricing and overall strategy. Because again, I have conversations with customers and we also have friendships. And I feel with this third party, they were brutally honest about, here's what he's really good at. Here's maybe some areas in which the free agent could kind of, optimize a few things. And here's what keeps us up at night. And that really kind of helped us shift our focus. And so I think it's a great point. And again, I'm a big believer that some sort of third party that's independent is a good source to kind of glean some additional information from the customers.
Oh, completely agree. I love it. I do that all the time. Even just this week, I love doing those interviews with customers for my clients. It is so fun, what you learn on those conversations. So I completely agree with you 100%. If you have the resources budget, absolutely get a third party to do it for you. That's a really great point.
Awesome. Thank you. So as a follow-up, is there a typical plan or order of events that companies should really follow when they're talking about marketing? So as an example, right now, my company, we focus on outbound, we focus on SEO, SEM, social media, and we're also kind of looking into PPC, pay-per-click as like the next frontier. That's what makes logical sense to me and my business. And that's also too, though, I haven't talked to industry expert that said, yes, that's the correct path, though. It's just something that I've kind of cobbled together on my own due to research and a myriad of other kind of reasons. But is that a decent plan of attack? And I realize it also is going to depend on what industry you're in, but like overall, is that a pretty overarching, like decent strategy, or would you maybe kind of swap a few things here and there?
Great question. I'm going to point out one thing you said in there. You said due to research. So you had done the research first to kind of figure out what made sense based on the conversations you had with your customers. And I would say start there, because where you market is going to depend entirely on who your audience is. So I would say, like, as I mentioned earlier, talk to your customers, put that buyer persona together, understand where they like to be, where they like to live and hang out, and then use that to kind of guide which channels that are going to make sense for your customer. So for example, I have an industrial manufacturer who is very niche. And so paid search and organic search SEO is a great play for them because it's very easy to rank for keywords in a very niche industry, right? If you're not competing against a ton of keyword traffic.
Whereas I'm competing against a ton of keyword traffic.
Exactly. Whereas if you're in digital marketing like me, right, you really have to niche down even further and figure out, okay, am I marketing to a specific, metal manufacturing companies? In that sense, it would make sense for you to do an organic SEO strategy. If you really have a broad target, SEO is really hard to rank for. So It depends on your customer, right? And what their audience is. I have another, customer who SEO would not really be the best play because it's a dental laboratory and they have, very broad keywords. So it depends entirely on your audience and your industry, and also like if you're in B2C, for example, it may make sense for you to work with influencers, in Instagram, for example. So I would say it depends. I know that's not like a very specific answer, but It depends entirely on your audience where you should go and start first.
But I think it ties back to the research component, and that you need to know your market and who you're competing against. As you mentioned, your persona, and I guess it probably starts there, right? Creating a company persona, and then building out the plan accordingly. Which is it's exhausting though, because there's so many ways you can spend money on marketing. There's so many marketers out there, right? And like SEO scares the hell out of me, honestly, because it's such a black hole, and you never know if it's going to be successful or not. Which is kind of why I shifted that in my strategy, like middle to outer ways. Kind of focus on a few things here, and then eventually build into the areas in which you're starting to pay more money.
I would say you're doing SEO right now by doing this content. I think that, I feel like at the end of the day, you got to think about what your customer, we're here to help them. So anytime you're creating a piece of content that helps them and answers their problem, pain, challenges, that's SEO. That's good SEO. So, it's not the old days where you had to do all this keyword stuffing on the page and all that stuff. It's really changed a lot. So I think if you're creating really good content, you're doing SEO right.
Well, good. That's actually a follow-up question I have. So let's table that, and we'll get to that in about 2 minutes. So a question that's really near and dear to my heart is in regards to outbound and inbound. So right now we're doing a lot of outbound work. And my goal in 2022 was to flip the funnel and really kind of have inbound. And I've realized that that's not a short-term fix, right? That's more of a long-term play. And so I've shifted from 2022 focus to now like 2023. Like maybe we can kind of, crack the code and flip the funnel and have inbound. Because this may sound selfish or opportunistic, but candidly, I want to be in a position where I can cherry pick which clients are A clients, work with those, and give them my best, right? I mean, that's really the goal. And so what are some actionable insights, perhaps, maybe for companies that are trying to flip the funnel and get more inbound lead flow? Does it tie back to kind of, digital marketing, digital media, social media, rather, podcasts? Like, what can companies do maybe tomorrow to have a better footprint in hopes of kind of driving more traffic to them?
Absolutely. You have to position yourself as an expert in the industry. And to do that, you got to create content. So whether that's podcasting, blogging, whatever the case may be, create that content and then use the content waterfall approach, where you're taking that larger piece of content and you're chunking it out and distributing it across all of your social channels. Anyway, let's just say you do one podcast for the month, okay? Then you can actually break that out into audiograms and quote blocks and text blocks, and you just chunk it out and you distribute it across your social media channels throughout the month. You're repurposing something you've already created, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so the more that you can create a consistent process of creating that content on a regular basis, on a regular cadence, that's going to build you momentum over time. That's going to help you increase that inbound traffic, inbound leads, and help you get the right people coming to you. And you're right, it is a long game. It takes time to get there. But another thing I recommend is just partnering with affiliates. And that's something I've done for my own business is, really getting strategic about finding partners who sell similar services to you and can bring you in to clients and resell your services. And I think that's a really good way to do that too. So anyway, but it's all about consistently creating content.
So that's the question I was going to ask, right? So I was going to, because one of the things we do a good job of, not a good job, but we provide content, we push content, but the consistency component is what's really lacking, because I get burned out. And, with kind of me getting burned out, then we kind of start lacking content because I own the company, it's kind of my brand, et cetera. So do you think, are you a big believer that the consistency really is key to a strong digital marketing?
Yes. It is the secret that everybody sleeps on. Nobody cares. Like, think about marketing. Everybody thinks, podcast, that's so sexy. This video marketing, it's so sexy. But consistency is really the key to success. Consistency is really what's going to make the difference. You have to be doing it over and over and over again for at least 6 months to a year. And then, that's when you're going to start to see the momentum build. And it does. I see it with my clients,
6 months to a year.
I see that with my clients, they, at first, we'll blog twice a month, and after 3 months they're like, nothing's happening, what's going on? And people get impatient and they get antsy.
Yeah.
You wait that time period and all of a sudden it flips, it changes. So it's like going to the gym. You can't get a 6-pack in a week. You have to keep going over and over again, you know?
Well, in my
And the thing is,
situation, it's
you make
about
people feel like they want something quick and fast. And I wish I could tell you there was a quick and fast solution. Oh, there's not.
it's the
You
long.
have to, it is a long game, you know, it's a long game.
So that was really, I mean, kind of my last question was really the social media component, podcast, and you answered that question. So it really seems that like the key to getting more exposure, to flipping the funnel, is really going to boil down to content, and more importantly, consistent content. So getting, creating a cadence. Like for instance, I try to post a podcast every 2 weeks. Like on Wednesdays, we share basically a snippet followed by the full episode on a Friday. And that's been difficult to keep up with, but I've got mechanisms in place. I have an admin that kind of takes care of the heavy lifting. But it's sometimes you got to go to that dark place and get the energy and inspiration to continue to push the content out there, because we can all get burned out. And candidly, the latter part of last year, I got burned out. Of course, COVID and a whole lot of stuff was going on, but I literally stopped doing content. I stopped, participating on LinkedIn. It was the one area that I just could not muster up the energy. And I've since kind of realized the error of my ways. And it's taken a while for me to get back and start kind of rebuilding what I walked away from. And so now I look back and it's like, holy crap, if I would have continued, I'd be in a much different space from an inbound perspective than I am now, because I had to rebuild the momentum that I let dissipate.
What made you come back? What was it that made you decide you needed to come back to?
I don't know. I guess, I took the holidays off last year, as well, just kind of, decompress. And I feel like maybe I came back in 2022 inspired, but also too, did a lot of soul searching, read a lot of books, and really did come to conclusions similar to what you said, that consistent content is really going to be the key to flipping the funnel. And also I enjoy doing, podcasts. I enjoy content. But also too, finding the time to be creative was a bit of a struggle.
It is so hard as entrepreneurs because we have to do so much and there's so many hats. So I completely understand and respect. I've been in it. I get it and I feel it.
It's a
I
fight.
would say too, like leverage your partners and help them distribute it for you too. If you can leverage like this great content that you're creating, I'll share it out on my, LinkedIn posts and everything. So as much as possible, using your affiliates to kind of help you distribute it can help you get that momentum more quickly too.
But I found too, you also have to ask, right? I mean, some people that I talk to that have on my podcast are like, hey, share everything with me. I got it. I'm going to push it out. And there's others that, maybe have a different mentality because they're more timid in nature, or they haven't had much exposure to it. And I think too, you just need to ask, ask the people you're collaborating with if they're open to kind of pushing it out on their channels. And 9 out of 10 times they would be, otherwise they probably wouldn't be on the podcast.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So,
and I mean, I will tell you, I started engaging heavily on LinkedIn at the beginning of this year. And I decided, I was like, this is the channel I need to be on. This is where my target market is. I need to be creating content for this channel. And it transformed my business. It has absolutely transformed my business. The relationships I've developed and the partnerships that I've made just in the last year has just made such a significant impact on my business. So I am a firm believer from my own experience and from my clients that if you keep consistently going at it and creating that content, it will eventually work out.
Which is a lesson for another day, because perseverance that cannot be taught. But
yes.
Nicole, thanks so much for being on. Really appreciate your time. So where can people find you in order to learn more about you and your business?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. My profile, you can find me on LinkedIn. My profile is Donnelly. No, I didn't know my profile. That's terrible. It's Nicole-Donnelly-DMG. That's my LinkedIn profile. You can also go to my website, which is donnellymgroup.com, DONNELLYM group.com.
Awesome. We'll be sure to post that on the video here. And hey, thanks so much for coming on. Real pleasure talking with you. And thanks for sharing your knowledge with the world.
Thank you, Bo. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Signing off. Thank you.